On May 12th, Chris Murphy, the Democratic senator from Connecticut, issued a tweet. And here is what he said. A law firm that POTUS, meaning Trump, used to show that he has no ties to Russia, was named Russia Law Firm of the Year for their extensive ties to Russia. Unreal. And as of yesterday, when I took a screenshot of this tweet, it had been retweeted over 56,000 times, had received over 80,000 likes, and of course that doesn't count the number of quote tweets that it might have received, which you can't easily track using Twitter. What's really bizarre about this particular tweet is that it doesn't hold up to scrutiny even with the most basic cursory checking. It's not like you had to go through a whole investigative process to determine that the claims in this tweet are just beyond ridiculous. So let's just parse them very briefly here. First of all, the firm that Murphy is referencing is Morgan Lewis. Now, Morgan Lewis is one of the, quote, big law firms in the country. It does all kind of just banal activities everywhere. It's one of the most mainstream, normal, you would say, firms in the world. It was ranked by the Law 360 website in 2016 as the third largest U.S. law firm. So it's the third largest in the country. It has the third most attorneys of any law firm in the country as of last year. That means it's not a fringe firm. So what you would have to extrapolate from Murphy's contention here is that anybody associated with Morgan Lewis thereby should be considered as having, quote, ties or extensive ties to Russia. So who are some other people that have ties to the firm Morgan Lewis and by extension might be considered as having, quote, ties to Russia? Well, one of them is Hillary Clinton, who hired a Morgan Lewis partner in June of 2016 to vet her potential vice presidential running mates. That was just last year. But, per this formulation that Murphy laid out in this very incendiary and popular tweet, you could easily imagine a scenario where, if the political circumstances were different, Hillary Clinton could be alleged to have ties to Russia simply because she utilized this firm. So why is this notable? I mean, it's just a tweet. Well, for one thing, Chris Murphy is somebody who's seen as a rising star in the Democratic Party. He's received a lot of accolades to that effect. People have already been speculating about whether he might run for president in 2020 potentially. And the other thing is he's actually been at the forefront of some pretty important foreign policy related issues. He, under the Obama administration, collaborated with Rand Paul to demand some accountability on the U.S. underwriting, essentially, the Saudi campaign to immiserate Yemen. And he had some pretty strong statements about the Syria strikes that Trump launched in early April. So he is, at least relative to other senators, he has been on the cutting edge of the foreign policy discourse. But for some reason, with respect to Russia, that just goes all out the window, and people like Murphy lapse into this very kind of mindless, even reactionary, saber rattling and hysteria. And the thing is, there's a reason at this point to have genuine concerns about the Russia story, which is very large and multifaceted at this point and needs to be carefully parsed. But even if you believe that Russia is the number one issue in the country right now and that all activist energy should be devoted to trying to hold Trump accountable for whatever ties he might have. There's a way to go about furthering that issue in a judicious manner, in a sober manner, not in a way that kind of just lapses into this very histrionic kind of posture in which, as the popularity of this tweet demonstrates, that kind of just throwing red meat to the base is a pretty viable political strategy right now. It's viable, and it'll probably get you a lot of plaudits if you're a Democrat to just launch into the most hysterical possible interpretation of what's going on vis-a-vis Russia, claiming that one of the largest law firms in the United States is compromised by the Russian state, and saying that anybody who has a connection to that firm therefore has to account for their own connections. I mean, that's truly a form of neo-McCarthyism. And there's just a huge audience out there that's very, very receptive to claims of that nature because they want to believe the worst thing about Trump imaginable. And this kind of, they're primed to believe that the most extreme interpretation of the Russia issue is correct, and therefore they're going to take claims like the one Murphy made seriously. I mean, the award that Murphy cited in that tweet was actually given to Morgan Lewis by a UK publisher, a publisher based in London. So they didn't even receive a Russia award, and if they had, that still wouldn't justify the tweet. But what this suggests is that Murphy didn't even take basic cursory steps to verify what it is he was asserting. Just seemingly wanted to find just a quick way to rile up the base and do something that kind of heightened his platform. I actually submitted a request for comment yesterday to the Murphy communications staff. Haven't received anything back. Not necessarily anticipating receiving a reply at this point, but I think it's important to follow up on these claims and not allow them to just proliferate unchallenged. So that's it for now. I will link to the tweet in the description box of this video, as well as other sources, so check for yourself. And that'll do it. So have a wonderful day.